All right. Well, I'm here with Caitlin to talk about why we should primary Biden. But before that, um, Google has announced now, Google announced a VPN service a while ago, their special VPN called Outline. And they thought this would be a way to overcome internet censorship. And then, of course, Iran just blocks that, like every other VPN. So now they have made another tool. They've released an API or something, a released code so you can build um, a VPN into your app for the phone. And somehow they think that will be more resistant to censorship. And I'm not quite clear on the technical reasons. They say it conceals the traffic, so it looks more like normal traffic. And I don't know why they think authoritarian countries won't just block that. But I'm thinking perhaps if it was built separately into every app, then it would be harder to block. You'd have to put some effort into blocking each app. Anyway, they're offering this tool, and I'd sort of like to play with it and find out exactly what it does at a packet level and how it's, and I'm motivated thanks to my glorious City College because they block everything on the firewall, so my projects keep breaking. So then I punch through with a VPN. Next semester, they block that too. So City College seems to be an authoritarian dictatorship blocking everything vigorously, thus giving me a harmless playground to practice how to punch through these defenses. So anyway, I'll probably be researching it more as we go ahead. And so Caitlin has got radiation concerns for cell phones.
For the iPhone, no less. Of all phones have radiation issues, and it's the iPhone 12, which is the one I use, which is awesome. So let me.
I must confess some degree of skepticism.
Well, we'll talk about what this means because it's not as bad as maybe people are thinking. So The Verge has an article written by photo by Jiren Pavic. By Tom Warren. Okay. Oh, Tom Warren. We've talked about Tom Warren before. Anyway, so Apple updated its iPhone 12 software to reduce the amount of radiation being emitted by the phone, which apparently has violated France's radiation exposure limits for specific specific absorption rate limits. So what does that mean? Basically, different countries provide different rules regarding the amount of radiation that devices are allowed to get absorbed by human tissue. And when I say radiation, I'm not talking about like radioactive materials, stuff that'll cause like cancer. It's think like your microwave oven type radiation, where it just heats up tissue. And that's the extent of it. And the iPhone 12 is absolutely not dangerous as far as I can tell in any way, shape, or form. But it does exceed the specific absorption rate of that France has laid out for mobile devices. So Apple has to, fix this somehow, and they just fixed it by issuing a software update that I guess reduces the power to certain components.
So does that mean it will have a weaker signal or drop calls more often or something?
Yep. So you'll have to upgrade your iPhone.
Oh, so you have to buy a later iPhone, but won't the later iPhone, if it has a strong enough signal, break the rules again?
Not necessarily, no.
I'd like a lot more technical information.
I would too. I haven't found too much technical information about the what specific frequencies were being used that violated the specific absorption rate.
Yeah, I mean, the specific absorption rate I know is for like ham radio, and it's a really high power ratio where it actually like harms you. And iPhones should never be within a mile of that.
Right, exactly. And it's like I said, this is France's rules. And
so is the law just stupid or what?
I imagine it's just stupid. And the thing is, like, I violate even the ham radio specific absorption rate stuff all the time because I know what I'm doing, and I don't care if a part of me gets a little warm. Whatever, that's fine. In fact, there have been tales of people warming themselves up under microwave transmitters. I mean, that is.
I've heard proposals that we should save energy by just having microwave transmitters to heat the people instead of heating the whole rooms. I mean, this is, and there's actually some degree of biological concern about microwaves. It's actually part of my PhD thesis, but anyway.
Well, the main concern about microwaves is that they do go underneath
Oh, you froze up. I think your computer crashed. I'm going to pause this video if I can figure out how. Yeah. All right. We've resumed after a pause due to Caitlin's inferior technology. But
Yes.
I went and looked up a Washington Post article I added to the page that talks more about what happened in France. So that's interesting. Anyway, go ahead with what you were saying.
Oh, I forget. I think I was talking about specific absorption rates. Oh,
Yeah.
the one thing you have to be careful of with specific absorption rates, if you're working with like microwaves, wear a tinfoil hat. This is the only time you literally should wear a tinfoil hat, because the microwaves can go underneath your skin and heat up tissue underneath. And this is fine if it's, your arm or whatever. Not so good when it's your brain. And so to prevent that, a tinfoil hat works wonders.
Well, now there's a practical recommendation that I
Yeah.
find quite charming. Anyway, I've been reading about the Washington Post article talks about this, and they even quote the various studies to argue about whether phone radiation harms you, and they're very inconclusive and very unconvincing. And they explain how it's a number I didn't know here. They say they test these phones at their maximum radio strength, and typically when the phone is in use, it's 10 to 50 times less than that. And it failed in France by if you put it in direct contact with your skin, it has an absorption of like 5.4, and the French legal limit is 4. So it's very small distance. And another thing, which I've heard before, which I think makes sense, is that this is all pretty much been overtaken by events, because people do not hold the phone up against their head anymore. Everybody has Bluetooth. So the phone is in fact not that close to your body anymore. So anyway, it's interesting to read, and it sounds like it's a small technical change required, and it may affect other European countries, but it just seems like it's of no great importance, except that it will feed the people who are like terrified and convinced that cell phones are destroying you, sort of like the people that think there's 5G in the vaccine and stuff like that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, now we get to my article. I assume will make some trouble. David Ignatius wrote an article recently saying that Biden shouldn't run, and I must say, I think we're headed for a real political crisis in America, and I find it kind of amazing how both parties are doing the opposite of what they should do. Like the Republicans are running a vigorous primary with a whole bunch of candidates fighting like crazy, when in fact there is no logical reason for that at all, because their base just wants Trump. It's a personality cult. An overwhelming number of Republicans want Trump. I don't know why they don't do what they did last time and just say we're declaring Trump and not even bothering with a primary, because there's no point at all. This whole flock of people are fighting for the privilege of being like 5%. So it's kind of a ridiculous circus. And Republicans are not much in favor of democracy anyway. So I don't know why they don't just appoint Trump a dictator and admit it, which is essentially what they're doing. Whereas the Democrats are making the same mistake they made in 2016, where they don't trust democracy. They don't want to have an actual primary. They want a smoke-filled room of political consultants to plot a move and then just hand people, we have selected Hillary Clinton as the logical next candidate because it's her turn and voters' opinion is not required. You will simply comply and vote for the person we have selected, whether you like her or not, which is how we ended up with Trump. And the same thing's happening with Biden. They're putting up Biden and especially Kamala Harris because it's their turn. And this is based on a whole lot of nasty, flawed assumptions. One is that Biden deserves it because he had his first term and his ego would be hurt if he was forced to step down, and subjecting him to a primary would humiliate him. And the other one is incredibly racist and cynical, which is that Black voters will vote for Kamala Harris because she's Black. And political strategists say this is not true at all. Black voters are not the dumb racists you think they are. They vote for candidates who they think will accomplish good things for them and who can win. And they notice that Kamala can't win and that she's not popular and that she was a failure as a presidential candidate, moving from like 1% up to 15% and then crashing back down to 3%. And thinking that just the fact that she's Black is going to fool us into supporting her is not trusting us enough. And I think logically, the Democrats should have a primary so everybody can compete and let the voters choose a candidate. This is what they refused to do in 2016 and secretly tanked Bernie. So anyway, I think it's very interesting. There's a couple of very good articles here about it. What's wrong with Biden and what's wrong with Kamala and how they're making the wrong decision. But it seems like both parties are just absolutely hell bent on making this wrong decision. The Republicans are going to run Trump, even though he's got serious defects as a candidate, and the Democrats are going to run Biden, even though it violates all their principles. And what it means, I think, is that there'll be a lot of people voting third party, which will draw from Democrats, not from Republicans, and may put Trump back in. This is what happens when you have an old established brand like our current monopolies, like Google and Amazon, that push forward their old technology and refuse to let the new thing happen, is you get a third party move in and disrupt it. So anyway, it's these are good, intelligent arguments, but I think they're all futile. Both parties seem to be hell bent on continuing their preordained decision path.
So I was actually just thinking that as much as the liberals have this third party problem, I think the Republicans are going to start having that too. There's a bunch of Republicans who are fed up with this Trump nonsense. Like there's a good number of Republicans that love Trump and think Trump's the best. And they love that these current flock of candidates all want to beat Trump. But there's a sizable amount of Republicans that just want, a smaller government, just want, lower taxes, none of this fascist, bigoted nonsense. And
no, I disagree with your statement. I think those people have left the Republican Party. I think the current primaries show you how big the party of people who are fed up with Trump is and are still Republican, and it's like 5%.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the problem. I think anybody who actually doesn't worship Trump as a god has left the party. But we will see. Because, Pence,
I think
Pence is trying to say this. Pence is saying the usual Republican stuff, and he's getting like 1%.
Maybe, I don't know. All I can say is that there's a bunch of people in the Republican Party who I'm pretty sure don't like Trump, but are saying they like Trump because they're trying to toe the party line, and making sure that Republicans win is more important than any sort of political division.
That's absolutely true of elected Republican people serving in like Congress and Senate. They all hate Trump, and they are pretending to like him because they're afraid of them or their family being executed by Trump supporters who are constantly flooding them with violent threats. So they're basically being forced to pretend to support Trump. But the voters, Republican voters, are just 80 or 90% behind Trump, and nobody wants to hear a word against him. That's the problem. The Republicans suffer from actual democracy. The will of the people is forcing them in the wrong direction. The Democrats suffer from a lack of democracy. They're ignoring the will of the people and pushing something forward that people don't want. It's a strange situation where both parties are contradicting their own principles. But yeah, it would be nice. I would love for what you say to be true. I follow a lot of never Trump Republicans, and they're all saying, this has to end, and then they'll return to sanity. But there's no sign of that. And I think in other countries that collapsed from democracy into authoritarianism, it doesn't end. The authoritarians just push it forward and push their leader up and adore their leader more and more. I think this is an unsolved political problem of how does this end? Once you abandon democracy and you move to just worshiping a leader like a cult group, I think nothing can end it except the death of the cult leader. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, you've got SpaceX. The Starlink appears not to be living up to the hype.
Yeah. So when Starlink first came out, they thought everyone was going to get Starlink, and it was going to just take off like, hot buns, and everyone was going to love it. But
Liz was going to get Starlink. Did she ever get it?
I don't think she did.
And she's been trying to get it for like more than a year. Maybe it's not popular because you can't actually get it.
That could be it. So it turns out that it's not as popular as SpaceX predicted by quite a large margin, 20 times less than they predicted. So let me pull up the article if I can figure it out. Why, yes, I am an expert in technology. So anyway, so this is from Ars Technica by John Brodkin, and the article is titled SpaceX projected 20 million Starlink users by 2022. It ended up with 1 million. So they were off by a factor of 20.
To be fair, that's pretty typical for Elon Musk's promises.
Exactly. Now what's interesting is that they are looking at making a profit this year, which is a quick turnaround for profit. A lot of times these tech companies start off making a loss, and then once the technology matures, they start making a profit, and they're looking to making a profit this year. But it's not taking off as much as people would think. Basically, there's a very limited market for people that really need Starlink. The people that really need Starlink are people that are living in very rural areas that don't have any other options.
Well, very rural, like being like 10 miles out of a city center in America. But anyway, go
Right.
ahead.
Yes, exactly. So farms and middle wilderness, if you do a lot of camping and you need high-speed internet, that's good. And also airplanes and boats could really use Starlink. I know airplanes in particular have really bad Wi-Fi because they're using, I forget the name of the service, but it's just a geostationary satellite. It's slow, it's laggy. Switching to Starlink would be much better for airplanes and boats. With that said, that's really the market that they have. Anyone who can get like high-speed cable or high-speed fiber to their home will have much better and cheaper service with that than
Also,
Starlink.
the Ukrainian army is a good customer base.
Oh God. Yeah. And so this is the other thing too, of course, is that since these private, so for a while now, the US government has been saying, we should really be encouraging private people to get into space and, compete with NASA and do all these great things. It'll be great. And we're going to improve American interests. Well, it turns out that if you let private corporations control our public infrastructure, that can put the American interests to the wayside. So Elon Musk, for example, sort of, I guess, kind of sided with Russia and like turned off Starlink like services over Ukraine. And it's like, oh, well, and it really goes to show the importance of, there's something to be said about the free market, but there is something to be said about public infrastructure being controlled by the public. So that's an issue to think about as well. But yeah, unfortunately, SpaceX is not as popular, or yeah, Starlink is not as popular as they thought it was going to be, but it's still making a profit, and so that's pretty good.
Yeah, this is another one of Obama's broken campaign promises. He was going to address the digital divide by laying out more fiber so the rural people in America would have better internet, but he was unable to accomplish it. He got distracted by healthcare, and pretty much everything else fell to the wayside.
Yeah, thanks, Obama.
Yeah, I actually started teaching fiber optics classes, expecting my students to get jobs laying all that fiber, and then none of it happened. Anyway, such is life, and we still need it. It's incredible how bad the internet service is in America. Many people I know just barely out of a city, they don't have good internet service. My students don't have good internet service. It really is a sin and a shame. I remember a few years ago, there was a guy that had a lot of charts where he showed the level of broadband penetration, and America was like 18th in the world, miles behind like Japan and South Korea and lots of other countries. It really is pretty shocking how we once thought of ourselves as like a tech leader, and we're falling so far behind.
So I will defend America here and point out that we are a very large country with lots of rural areas between cities. So if you look at something like Korea, it's much easier to get them all upgraded to broadband than it is for even just the state of California, let alone places like Nevada or Colorado, which are like mostly desert in the middle of nowhere with low populations. Mostly.
That's true.
I mean, it is a much bigger feat to get America up to broadband standards than it is like Japan or Korea or one of the smaller countries.
It is. We'd have to lay a whole lot of fiber. This was my thinking. My students will get jobs laying all that fiber, but no.
Yeah, and then we lay the fiber, and then in 30 years we have to lay new fiber because that fiber is now too old and obsolete, and the other countries are going ahead of us. I mean, it is a big problem.
Even more jobs for my students. What's wrong with this?
No, I'm with you, Sam. I think we should just pony up the money, increase taxes, pony up the money, get the public infrastructure, and keep it updated. Or I'm with you on that, but most people are not on board with that kind of investment.
Well, logically, perhaps it would be better to put up satellites and build some kind of Starlink or something to reach them, but we ought to reach them somehow.
Right.
anyway, we'll see what happens. And anyway, there's another article here where I think I have another outrageous position. So the White House wants to address ransomware by telling nations to stop paying the ransom. Now, they don't yet think they can order their citizens and companies to not pay the ransom, although it would seem to me that would be an option, just pass a law making it illegal to pay the ransom. But they want the governments to promise not to pay the ransom. Now, I think this is actually a very good idea, and I would like to see governments not pay ransom for people either. So I'm thinking if I've already skipped an opportunity to go to Russia because I'm worried about the way Russia kidnaps scientists and keeps them as hostages. And now I'm thinking I probably don't dare go back to China because China's doing the same thing. And I'm thinking if I were to go to China, I would put up a webpage saying, "What if they kidnap me, refuse to pay anything, just let me die," because I think that should be the right position. America has a public position of not negotiating with terrorists, and then we absolutely do. Like to get Brittany Griner back, we release a notorious arms dealer to the Russians to encourage them to kidnap more Americans to get whatever they want out of us, because we will just pay terrorists who kidnap our people, and we'll also pay criminals who hijack our infrastructure and so this is the old British solution, is a stiff upper lip, refuse to pay and let those people die. And I'm actually for that, but it's not the American way. And I don't think it's certainly not the French way. And so I think this is another idea that's dead in the can. I think there used to be a nation that would actually live up to this, Sparta and Britain, but I don't think America and the rest of Europe ever was on board with this. They're basically morally weak, and they're cheerfully pay a criminal they'll get rid of a problem today, cheerfully making 10 times the problem tomorrow by paying criminals ransom. And I don't think anybody's willing to actually accept the harsh medicine of stopping paying ransom yet. But it would work. But I don't think anybody's got the guts to do it. Anyway, and the last one here is AI generating music from text. That's a strange idea.
And it totally works. So AI, so there's an article here from Ars Technica, and I'll show this here. This is by Ben Edwards on Ars Technica. And AI, we've seen AI generate, short stories, text. We've seen AI generate images and even movies at this point. And the next big thing is AI generated music. And it totally works. And, it's not inspired music by any stretch of the imagination, but it works. And it's high quality music as well, running at, the standard 44.1 kilohertz.
Can you play some music? Do they have examples?
Yes. So if you go to the stability.ai website where they have the main article, they do have audio samples. So Sam, you'll have to go on mute for a little bit while I play this, because I'm too lazy to get virtual audio cable set up. But let me switch audio output to my speakers. Okay, so I'll play a sample and hopefully you should be able to pick this up. So this is Epic Music. This is Epic Music trailer. This is a prompt for some lo-fi beats.
I'm not hearing anything. Nope, it's not working. Well, I heard that.
Yeah, so I had to turn on. I had to turn on the original sound. So let me replay the Epic trailer music. Sorry about that. I'll replay the Epic trailer music. All right, now we'll play some bluegrass. And it can not only generate music, it can also generate sound effects as well. So let's generate people talking at a busy restaurant.
Okay. Well, they
Yep.
seem sort of to match the text, but they also seem like they're only generating about 5 seconds of stuff and looping it.
No, they're not. I mean, I'm turning it off, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's generated like the first generation is 1:35 long. That's the epic, music, epic trailer music. And then the lo-fi hip hop was 1 minute long. The bluegrass was 1:35 long. I mean, yeah, no.
I guess they've trained this like LLM on a ton of music from the internet or something.
One would assume so. In fact, I was thinking, how would they do this? And I think they were doing an audio denoise type situation where they generate a bunch of noise for audio noise, and then they say, well, denoise the music using this prompt, and they just denoise. That's probably what it's doing.
Well, yes, now that you mention it, that's how stable diffusion works, and that's quite logical.
Yeah, I imagine it would work for audio space as well as visual space. So
Yes, yeah, now you wouldn't even need to train it. You synthetically create the training data.
Yeah, in fact, you can see it right here. So you have the prompt coming in, and then the noise goes into the diffusion unit, which then gets sent to the latents, which then goes to the generated audio. So it's just basically turning noise into real, audio.
Yeah, that's stable diffusion. That's the standard way.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Technologically, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised it works as well as it does, and it generates music, but it's not inspired music by any stretch of the imagination. You wouldn't expect it to be, but if you need a quick sound effect, I mean, this could be very useful in audio video productions.
I guess so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this one, and we'll have another one on Tuesday.